Wakakap. Today is the 4th of May, 2022. We come together to practice the Dhamma, to cultivate wisdom, this clear knowing, clear seeing, to give rise to wisdom, in terms of the Dhammas that should be known and seen. And that which should be known and seen, those Dhammas we can call materiality and mentality. To know their nature is like that. And whether the Buddha awakens in the world or not, this nature of reality is the same. The nature of phenomena is to arise and persist for a little while. And when they persist in the same way. And whatever cause gives rise to phenomena, they arise and they cease. And we see that everything arises from a cause, that this gives rise to that, and that gives rise to this. We go from ignorance to conditioned formations, to consciousness, materiality and mentality, to feeling tone, craving, attachment, birth, existence, and suffering. These are all Dhammas that arise. And they arise and they don't last forever. They don't persist. But we see that all Dhammas arise. And all Dhammas arise based on a cause. And similarly, suffering, this quality of dukkha, has a cause. And the cessation of suffering is the absence of Dhammas arising. And this is no suffering arising in the heart. But if we don't know, if we don't have wisdom, then we're lost and we cling. And this clinging, for instance, we cling to views. And in the world, people have different views. And a lot of fear as well, a lot of fear arising. For instance, with regard to vaccines, there are different views in the world. And some people think that there's problems with regard to this. Some people think that taking the vaccine will give rise to problems. Other people think that not taking the vaccine will give rise to problems. And so people have a lot of fear about this, fearing vaccines or fearing getting sick. But we can summarize this and contemplate, thinking, having been born, what do we fear? Do we fear birth? But we see that everything in the world must die, and that whatever cause we die from, of all the various causes that can cause our death, whatever those causes are, they only kill us once. But having been born with this fear, fearing old age, sickness and death, and this leading on to further ignorance, craving and attachment, then having this ignorance, craving and attachment, this is the cause for us to be born again. But we don't fear ignorance, craving and attachment that much. We fear death, we fear separation from the loved. And when we separate from that which we love, we feel sad and we cry. Rinpoche said that if we cry when our relative dies, why don't we cry when they're born? When they're born, we feel happy. But this birth is actually the cause of the death. And similarly, the things that we like, the things that we enjoy, is the very cause of our suffering. But we don't see it. This means we don't yet have wisdom. Rinpoche gave a simile that's worth listening to, that's very deep. A simile about the head and the tail of a snake. That this suffering, that which we don't like, is like the head of the snake. We grab the head of the snake and we die right there, or we suffer right there. But pleasure is the tail of the snake. The tail doesn't bite us, but if we grab hold of the tail of the snake firmly, then the head whips around and bites us afterward. So we feel that it's pleasure and happiness, and we cling to that pleasure, but then that's the cause for suffering to arise. So in our lives we have always seeking and making effort to gain things. And what are we seeking? Well, we're seeking the things that we like and seeking to avoid the things that we don't like, that we don't want. We see that some people in the world like the vaccine, and they think that not having the vaccine will be a problem, and they really want that vaccine. But some people don't like the vaccine, they don't want the vaccine. Even if travel is inconvenient, they still won't take the vaccine, and they don't want to do the ATK COVID test. And some people are like this. So we see that there's different views like this. People have a view and they think that I'm right, other people are wrong. Only I am correct, even if they're the only one in the world. But this thing that we think we're right about, if we cling to it and we don't let it go, then that's wrongness arising right there. So we see that these views are important, different people having different views, but we should be careful not to fight about them and to be careful about the views that we have. And whatever we like, we do that. Whatever we don't like, we don't want to do that, or we don't want that. We should see this as Dhamma. For instance, when the Buddha met and spoke with Diganaka Brahmin, and Diganaka Brahmin had the view that whatever he liked, he wanted that, he wanted to do that. Whatever he didn't like, he didn't want that, he didn't want to do that. And he thought that this was the best view. He thought, well, whatever I don't like, why would I want that? That which I like is pleasure and happiness. But then the Buddha asked him, he said, well, old age, sickness, and death, do you like them? And Diganaka Brahmin said he doesn't like them. And really no one likes old age, sickness, and death. But the Buddha asked, well, will you receive these things anyway? And Diganaka Brahmin answered, yes, I will. So we see that the view of Diganaka Brahmin, that whatever he liked, he wanted, whatever he didn't like, he didn't want, this is an incorrect view. So he had to throw out that view. So views that we have about vaccines, we have to be careful with regard to these views. If we don't want the vaccine, we should be careful about this as well. And clinging to any of these views, this will be a source of suffering. And Diganaka Brahmin clung to his view a lot, but he listened to the Dhamma of the Buddha, and he's able to accept that old age, sickness, and death were normal. And this acceptance of its normality is very important. He saw that everything arises, stays for a little while, and ceases. And this is normal. Arising and ceasing is normal and natural. He saw that everything in the world, all things arise and cease as their nature. That there's nothing in the world that doesn't change. Whether it's something good that we like or something we don't like, that it's normal, they have the same nature to change. So we see this quality of normality, see it arises, stays for a little while, and ceases. We see it clearly, and this is wisdom arising. So we meditate to see and know the Dhamma, to see all these things as normal and natural. But if we don't have wisdom, we just keep clinging to our views continuously. And sometimes we don't agree with those around us, or they have different views from us, and we feel that we don't like that experience of them having different views, and so we go to a different place. But then in that other place, we also have different views than those people and have disagreements, and so we go to yet another place because they have different views than ourselves. And we never find a place where we can rest, where we can settle. This is because we're only looking on the outside. We're only looking externally, but we're not looking internally. We're not looking at our own minds. Because this belief in our own views, we can't just keep believing like that. We have to teach our minds that these views are something uncertain, unsure. We feel that this view of ours is correct, but really it could be wrong. So it's unsure, it's uncertain. Don't cling to it. And we view it as self. We think that we're right and others are wrong. But we can ask, well, this quality of being right, quality of being wrong, me and others, where is the self to be found in that? Because this body is merely composed of earth, air, fire, and water. And these thoughts are merely formations that arise and cease in the mind. These thoughts that are meritorious, demeritorious, or neutral, there's no self to be found in them either. So these thoughts, we should train ourselves to see them as uncertain, as unsure, as not self. This is the path to freedom from suffering in our minds. So we may have views that are not the same as others, but we teach ourselves it's uncertain, it's unsure, and this gives rise to wisdom. And this arising of wisdom is capable of bringing us to freedom from suffering. So therefore we have to train and meditate. This is something important, to give rise to right view in the heart, not to cling to anything, because clinging to anything is suffering. Whether it's a view about vaccines or other things in the world, like war and other things that we're afraid of and have views about, these are things of the world. They're external matters. We see, well, what is the cause for their arising? We say that having been born, we experience dukkha, we experience suffering. And so if we just look externally, then we're not able to cure this issue. Then we just keep getting born over and over again, and we keep meeting with the same problems over and over again every time we're born, when we only look externally like this. And we keep meeting with agitation and troubles with no end to them. And these are troubles that we've met with already for countless lives in the past without end as well. So in this life that we have now, we should practice to make this experience of further suffering shorter and shorter, to use wisdom to contemplate, to see materiality and mentality as impermanent suffering and not self, so that in this life we can realize the quality of not having an eighth life. So may you set your hearts on this.